Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to you all and welcome to you, Stacey Uhrig. I'm so happy to have you here today. She is a coach and she is doing some great things. Her passion is working with adoptee adults and she's very passionate about that and she's also an adoptive mom, right? Correct?
Yeah.
So it's something that she's passionate about and she's overall just amazing at finding people's pain points and really helping them at a subconscious level where it really actually matters. So welcome, Stacey.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here today.
So excited. And I love the way that we met because it really was not that long ago, but there
I
was
know.
obviously like an immediate connection. So I
I
appreciate
know.
you asking me to come on.
And we're both from Jersey.
We're both from Jersey. It worked out really well. That was really strange because for people that don't know, we met at an event in New York City and ended up going out to dinner with a small group of people. And I think we were the only two people in that group from New Jersey,
I
right?
think so. That day,
Yeah,
I believe
yeah.
so.
So
Yeah.
that worked out well.
So thank you so much for coming on. So I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your sort of cultural background, where you grew up, your childhood, a little bit of that.
Sure. So, native New Jersey. I really only didn't live in New Jersey when I went to college. So, I've lived in New Jersey my entire life. And from the high level, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm me. I come from a family where I'm the oldest of four kids. My kids, as you mentioned, are adopted. They're both adopted from Korea, came home as infants. And my current life's mission is to help people through their stuckness. I like to help people flip their mindsets, is what I like to say. And I do that by way of being a coach, soon to be fully accredited and certified RTT practitioner, where I just love to work with people at a very deep level and help them kind of unravel where they're stuck.
Yeah, I love that. And tell us a little bit about your passion, how it grew in terms of helping people who have been adopted as kids and then as adults. You're helping them.
Sure. So, my initial passion to help people in general came just like it is with most healers from my own struggles,
Mm,
right? So, I don't think anybody at all um, doesn't walk with the struggle. Even if we want to pretend like life has always been rosy and perfect, there's always been some sort of challenge. And for whatever reason, in this particular lifetime, I've been handed more than the average number of challenges. And so when you're younger, you really see yourself as the victim. Why are these things always happening? But as you get older, you get wiser. And I have what I love to coin, and I didn't create this term myself. I actually got it from a book I recently read, that I have a tremendous amount of post traumatic wisdom. And I think a lot of people sensed that in me early on, maybe even before I even realized that I had it. And I was constantly being sought out, even in general terms, like in a hallway in a school. I was just constantly being sought out for advice and guidance. And after doing that for 20 years and constantly helping people, I really realized that I wanted to formalize that by way of doing it in an actual formal practice. So that's where my deep need to help people came from. I feel like if I've gone through all of this and I have the wisdom, I should share it. But more importantly, my kids are adopted, and that's been a really interesting journey. And as my kids get older, my eyes are much more wide open as to all the inherentness of what comes with being adopted. And I think in general, I did not understand as an adoptive mom, nor did a lot of the people that I talked to as adoptive parents. We didn't really truly understand the inherent trauma that comes from the loss of being adopted. And as my kids get older, I see it. And so I have a deep passion to really work with adult adoptees that don't understand why they're stuck, but they are. And I really want to help them get to the root, the reason, the cause of why they feel a certain way and allow them to start feeling peace and allow them to acknowledge it, thank it, release it, and be able to move on from it. Because and I'm sure for many people it's very confusing as to why they may be stuck, because they've always just been told you're so lucky, right?
Right.
You have this beautiful family, you're so lucky. Everything was good, you're so lucky, but yet that's not the way that they feel. So I have a deep desire to help them through that.
Yeah. And then for those people that you worked with, what do you think, if there is something that they have in common in terms of loss or the feeling that they feel?
I mean,
And
it's just that. I mean, people don't understand. So when we talk about trauma, and I'm going to put trauma in quotes, okay? People think of trauma as like this really big T, and they see it as a violation often, something that is happening to them, something that they've experienced, maybe in a war, something very violent or very um, kind of very significant. But what people don't understand is that trauma can be as simple as not feeling safe, can be as simple as not being seen, not being heard, not feeling valued, feeling insignificant. And the thing is that the brain doesn't process big trauma versus little trauma differently,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? Once it has that sensation, it has that sensation. And so when we talk about trauma so often, people are like, well, nothing traumatic ever happened to me. These
Yeah.
things that they think fall under that big T never happened to me. I never experienced that. So I didn't have trauma.
A lot of
But
people will say that I'm not traumatized. I have no trauma.
right.
Because
But there's an
major
inherent
household.
trauma.
Hmm.
There's an inherent trauma to being disconnected and removed from your original source. Let's just put it that way. Right? That might not really be able to be easily explained in words,
Yeah.
but it's a feeling of not feeling enough. It's a feeling of feeling different. It's a feeling of something not being available to them. It comes in the form of fear, discomfort, anxiety. And I've suffered, and I really will use the term suffer, from anxiety, overwhelming stress, depression for a large portion of my life. So I know how disabling that is. And I know how you just can't function at the level that you want. You're so stuck. I've been there. It's a horrible, very, very lonely, helpless place to be. And I don't think it's necessary for people to be there. I think that there are ways to get unstuck and to be flipped. And I think people just need to be open to the possibility of it.
How did you yourself get out of that space of sadness and anxiety?
So, I started going, I begged at the age of 15 to go to therapy, which was not an easy sell in 19, whatever that was, 86. And so I did a lot of traditional therapy, in and out, like most people. I'm 50 this month. So let's just say till I was 40. Okay. So that was 25 years of just constant in and out of therapy, to the point where therapists were like, I don't really know why you're here. You understand your shit. You've worked through it, whatever. But I was there because I still didn't feel okay. And it wasn't until I really, really had like a very significant event in my life that forced me literally to my knees. Like when I say literally to my knees, I mean, I literally was in a ball in a corner of a room, hysterically crying. Like I hit that wall. And I was about 40, 42 years old. And I had the name of a hypnotherapist for 2 years. And I had not reached out to her, mainly, and I'll be honest with you, it was the cost. Part of what was happening at that time was I was in a financial crisis, and I didn't really feel like I had the extra money to be spending on something like that. But I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. The sensation of anxiety and overwhelm in my chest felt like a freight train. And even though in my mind I was walking with constant gratitude and I was practicing gratitude all day long, my mind was not connecting with my body. I was very stuck in a fight or flight mode. And my response is usually fight. So I
Mm.
was like, had all this adrenaline. I was like, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. Because I felt so unsafe in the circumstance that I was in. But I couldn't settle it. So I finally broke down. I finally called this woman who I consider like really just a spiritual healer, but her formal title is clinical hypnotherapist. And I said, let's just go for it because nothing else is working. And I went and saw her and we did a number of sessions, and it was really almost that simple. You know,
Mhm.
once I understood that I was still reacting as though I was 10, 12, 13, 15 years old. That's what my body was reacting to, even though the threat was today, right? It didn't distinguish between then and now. Once I could recognize that and I could let that go and put it to rest, the amount of abundance and peace that I had was like intoxicating. So that's really how I got myself to a place that was better. But I feel like I'm always a work in progress. Like I'm
Aren't
still,
we all?
I just had like an hour-long chakra healing session this morning, which I've never had before, because we're constantly in process. Like it's not a one and done ever.
That's the beautiful part. We just, higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of freedom, higher levels of fulfillment. That's what it's about. It's not
Hmm.
supposed to end unless we're 6 feet under and come back, if you believe in afterlife, which I do.
Which I do.
So you come back.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned like sort of, I would term it like a rock bottom for you.
Mm.
So what would you tell a person who maybe right now is in that rock bottom space and maybe they don't have the money or in a financial crisis where they can't
Mm.
quite afford, a therapy session? What is a few things that they can do right now to
So
get
I
them on
think
the path?
So there's a couple of things you can do. One of the things I love about our network of healers is I've rarely gone to a healer's website and not seen a free discovery call ever. Right? I offer them, you offer them. Every healer I've met, every person that's in this space, we always offer a free call. And for me, I think for some people it's like, oh, I just want to see if that's somebody I want to work with. But for me, it is kind of more of let's just help you get that off your chest, and then you vibe with me, I vibe with you, you can decide what you want to do with it next. But like, first and foremost, find somebody to talk to, right? If you feel like you've exhausted your current circle because they're done hearing about your woes, reach out to a coach, reach out to a healer, check out their website, see if you can speak with somebody that maybe has a little bit more of an intuitive sense of how to listen. Number one. Number two, when I didn't have the money, I dug deep into books. And that can be free. You can go to your local library to get books. I always have a running list of books in my head. And it's not uncommon for somebody to literally message me and be like, I have a friend that's going through X. What book do you recommend? Because it's the most accessible.
Hmm.
And I know on my website, under my blog, I have a list of free resources. And under the free resources is just a running list of books that I think at least helped me on my journey. But I would always want to know what's going on with the person so I could recommend the appropriate book. But to me, reading, I mean, there are some amazing thought leaders out there that just by reading their books are almost as therapeutic as sitting with a therapist or with a coach.
I absolutely agree. And by the way, YouTube is full of free audiobooks.
I was
Like
just going to say,
full. So if anybody is listening and you just put in, the term that you want, like a keyword plus audiobook, you will see. Like,
100%. And more so than that, so many of these thought leaders are really giving away the farm on YouTube. Like I first was introduced to Marissa Pure, who is the founder of the methodology that you and I are both trained in, RTT. I mean, her website is, or her YouTube channel is so full of amazing long sessions of help. One person I love to recommend people listen to if they're coming to me because they're challenged in a narcissistic relationship is Dr. Ramani. She is unbelievable. People who come to me with deep senses of shame and guilt, I always recommend Dr. Brene Brown. Like, there's just
mhm,
so many people that have put it out there to consume. And that is another really, really, really great place to start. And podcasts, obviously,
yeah, definitely
right?
a podcast.
There's so much good information out there that people can literally start their journey for free.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes me think that if you truly want it, there's a place to start. There's like
100%.
millions and millions of types of resources that you can get to for free. And if you want somebody to hold your hand to help you go deeper, then you can always find ways to gather that to and do that. But to start, you can always start where you are right now.
100%.
Like the information is out there, is available.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's good for people to know that. And so I want to know for you personally, like on your journey, your healing journey, um, sort of if you had, would you change anything? Or where do you think you're going on your own journey?
So I will honestly say I wouldn't change anything. And it's so interesting because, I feel like as humans, we just try so hard to avoid pain, right? And you and I both know there's a gabillion rules of the mind, and one of them is that our mind will move us towards pleasure and away from pain, right? So we're constantly trying to avoid pain. But what I know to be true, 100%, is that every experience in your life is divinely designed for you.
For sure.
And so, and not just and so, but and it is those experiences that are the most challenging, the most painful, the ones that bring you to your knees, that are the most essential and significant in your life, because that's where you get to fall, transform, evolve, and grow. You cannot grow when everything is bright and cheery.
Absolutely.
So, to answer your question, you know, I'm so grateful for all the pain because I am a different person. I am transformed. I'm evolved. I am much wiser than I could have ever been. That's why I love that term, post traumatic wisdom, because I wouldn't have gained the insight and the knowledge that I have without these really, really difficult challenges.
What would you say was your biggest lesson from all of those challenges? Maybe, 2, 3 lessons, but yeah.
I think the biggest lesson for me was surrender. And I think, as someone who walked with a lot of anxiety, and to me, anxiety is not an emotion. Anxiety is a result. It's a feeling. It's an action that our body takes when it feels like it's unsafe. It's a physiological action or reaction, right? And so I walked constantly with that sensation in my body for decades. And what I've realized was that a lot of that sensation was coming from the fact that I was fighting what was. So in my mind, it shouldn't be this way. And I've learned that the word should is like the most, you know, challenging word, because you're really acting as though what's happening is not supposed to be happening. So to me, should is all shrouded out in
Yeah.
shame.
Hmm.
Right? So I recognized in myself that that sensation that I had in my system was really so much of me fighting in my mind what was happening. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't go this way. This person shouldn't do this. That shouldn't happen. And it wasn't until I surrendered. And I remember the moment I actually really did it. I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, just sobbing like ugly, snotty tears, something that was really, really sad happening in my life that I was fighting. And I literally just went like this. And I was like, I give it up. And I'm not one that was raised in a church or a temple or anything. I'm very Buddhist in nature. But I remember just saying, okay, I give it up, meaning I understand that there's something bigger here than me. And now I'm just along for the ride. And I was kind of just saying to the universe, I'll follow.
Hmm.
I understand you have a plan. I understand this is divinely designed for me. That's where that all kind of became clear to me. I'll follow. I'm not going to try to lead it anymore. And I think that's where people get stuck. They think they're controlling the situation, but they're not. They're fighting against what is. So
Yeah.
that was like a big, big, big moment for me. And that was in 2013.
Wow, that's powerful. And that's the ego. Like the ego is always
Mm-hmm.
wanting us to, stay there and, I can do it myself. I can do it myself. I can do this. I'm going to
I
control.
know what's best.
Why did it happen this way? I must change it. When
Mm-hmm.
the only thing we have control of is like our actions in the moment and for the future and what we can do to change our own mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like holding on to the past and trying to change it is just a losing battle.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. But when it comes to surrender, it's like the hardest thing for most people.
100%.
So how how would you help your client who's like, yeah, no, I want to do it myself. I want to do it my way.
So I think the first thing would be to really explore what they think surrender is, right? Because I think that that was my biggest challenge. I didn't, to me, surrender and forgiveness get very tightly aligned, right? And people have a hard time with forgiveness because they feel like if they forgive an action that somebody else took upon them, they're actually approving of the behavior. Where really forgiveness is of yourself, right? That's a huge concept and one that took me decades to understand. The surrender is a little bit similar. It's like you have to really accept that you are literally on this planet for the ride, and that this whole life we've been taught if you do this, then that can happen. You've been doctrinated to believe that you actually have a lot more control than you do. If you eat these foods, you won't get sick. If you do these things, you won't do that. You can control your weight. If you do this, you can control your job ladder climbing. If you do that, like we've been taught all these things. If you study hard, you'll get this grade, right? So you're taught you have a lot of control, but we actually have much less control than we think. I just said to a client the other day, I have this vision that when we're born, right, into this container, right, like when our soul is ready to go again, that there's like this huge ticker tape and it just like kind of overflows and like billows out. And they have all these like little dots in it and it's all cut out. And it's almost like, I guess you would call it destiny. It's like this predetermination of milestones, things you're going to experience to get you to the end. These are all the things you need to learn before this particular lifetime is done. And I feel like that's also predetermined too. Not everybody would agree with me on that, but I feel like the date of expiration is probably predetermined as well, which a lot of people have a hard time with. And so once I accepted that in my mindset, I could just surrender to I'm not in control. The ticker tape has already been made,
Yeah,
right? And I'm just along for the ride. And all the experiences that I'm going to have or because the ticker tape says I'm supposed to be learning these very particular lessons. And I feel like for me in particular, this particular life has been riddled with some really intense challenge. And I just know it's because there's things I'm meant to be really gaining now, because maybe I was gifted the opportunity in the past and I didn't pick it up.
absolutely. And I truly believe that, every challenge that we have, I don't believe that the universe will give us anything that we can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
We're
And you
having
see
it
that.
coming because we can truly handle it. We may not think, believe, or feel it, but we truly can. When you come out of it, you're like, oh, actually, I did do it.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to surrender, I think where the confusion may come is when people think, okay, you mean that I don't have to take action. I can just sit back and sort of wait for the universe to make things happen. And I don't think it's quite that. It's for me, what
No.
it means, it's more of to like do take action on the things that I want, but let go of the need and the desire for the result and how you want it to happen exactly this way. No, like put in the action, but sort of let go of
Well,
how it's
that's
going.
manifestation, right? Like
Yeah,
that's a big part of the law of attraction and a manifestation. Like you can envision what you want, you can put your intentions out to the universe, but I don't think that you just sit back and just wait for it to come to you either. I think that you
yeah,
have to put in the action to meet your desire. right?
Exactly.
But here's the thing, if my desire's peace, like, so I'll just use this example of when I surrendered, I was in conflict in a relationship with someone in my life that's significant. And for years, I was trying to get it to fit inside this one particular box because I believe that that's the box that it belonged in. And I had this epiphany of like, that person's never going to fit in the box. And I kind of surrendered to, okay, that person's in my life. That person will always be in my life, but I need to be open to something else. I need to be open to the fact that it's not going to fit inside that box, and not try to predetermine if it doesn't fit in that box, then what doesn't fit, right? Have this level of certainty, which everybody feels the most comfortable with. I just went like this and said, okay, just show me. Show me. I'll look around. I'll try to pick up what you put down, but like, I was no longer going to try to control that particular situation. And I think, people struggle, and this is actually a good thing to talk about because the holidays are rolling around. Like, we go into holidays and spending time with family and spending time with close friends, assuming that that's all supposed to fit in a very particular way. And a lot of my surrender came from realizing these people are in my life for sure, but not necessarily in the way that I thought that they were supposed to be. And when I was able to surrender to that and just accept what was, I found a lot of inner peace with it.
Please talk about that a little more, because that is such a fantastic thing. Because a lot of people, myself included, I've dealt with that, where I dated somebody and I wanted him to fit in my world, and it was just
Yeah.
not happening. And it was a struggle for me to like let go, because knowing that it's not going to fit. So how do you help somebody who's like, but why can't he be this way? I need him to be this way so everything is perfect, but it's never gonna be.
So I came up with this concept. I should probably trademark it. That I work with almost all my clients. And it doesn't have to be a relationship with the person. It can be your relationship with yourself. It can be something that you're managing at work. It can be used for anything. And the concept is the 3 R's. Remain. So let's just use your example with this guy was it a guy or a girl that you were dating? I don't want to assume. Okay.
Okay.
So, you're in this relationship and it's not fitting the mold, right? There's something missing in order for it to be the real quote unquote perfect, right? So we would dive into it and understand what you felt was missing for you. And then the 3 R's would be, okay, you have a choice. You always have dials to turn. Do you want to remain? Do you want to remain as is? Is it good enough? Are you willing to just accept what is and just remain unchanged, right? Because if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to reframe? So reframing is what I end up spending a lot of time with people. And now you're really looking at the whole picture. What parts of this are working for me? What parts of this are not working for me? Is part of it because my expectation is too high? Do I need to lower my expectation for this person? Do I need to be putting certain boundaries into this circumstance with this person? And you're really pulling it apart and trying to find out, okay, I want to maintain this relationship, whatever it is, can always be even with yourself. But what do I need to put into it so I can have that relationship, but also be true to myself? And if those two things can't work for whatever reason, then you have a third option, and that option is release.
That was my option.
Right. And the thing is sometimes you might find, and I see this a lot when I'm coaching people that are having this issue with a family member, because that's kind of like an inherent, like, you're in it, right? Especially if you're the one person in the family that's having the conflict, or maybe you're the one person in the family that's being truthful about the conflict and being honest about it. And so you have this shame and guilt associated with maybe reframing or even releasing because everybody else isn't willing to do it. But you have the guts to do it, right? So it makes you different and it isolates you, and You don't usually, or are not part of the community at that point, which is a horrible feeling. You feel very isolated. But it's very possible that somebody might release because it's just too toxic, or it's just the boundaries will never work, or the reframing will never work at that time. You release it, but then later can come back to it because maybe you've done the work on yourself to maybe be more firm with boundaries, or more firm with the expectations, or looser with the expectations. So sometimes I see people swing like a pendulum between the release and the reframe, not because they're not willing to let it go, but because maybe they've done the work on themselves and they still want to have some level of relationship with that person in their life.
Yeah. And I think, I also do believe there are instances where like you just gotta release. But also it's even that thing is a journey. We don't just wake up and be like, yeah, I'm gonna release. Like for me personally,
No.
like first, try and compromise, loosen my expectations, do all of that. But then I got to a point where I realized even all of that was not being true to myself, so I
Mm-hmm.
had to release. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a process and a journey where you would, like, the more you focus on it, you will start to find out, okay, where do you want to go with this?
Yeah. It's a very painful journey, but it's such a good journey that people have to go through because it's really where you learn your truth. You learn your own value, what you're willing to make important for you. And I think the biggest thing that I learned through my own journeys when I've had to either remain or reframe or release is I read a really, and it comes back to the books. I read this really good book, and it's called Life Lessons. And the authors were Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. And the two of them are kind of thought leaders in the space of working with the people that are dying, right? They're therapists, like psychologists for people who are terminal. And they wrote this really beautiful book. And what I love about it, it's called Life Lessons, is that every chapter is its own encased thing. So if you're struggling with something in your life, you could literally just read the one chapter and not have to go through the whole book. And what they did was they met with these people that were dying. They were in this last transition of life, and they were asking them very specific questions about time and relationships and the things that they learned about things that we struggle with as people who are having a lot of life left. And one of the things that came out was that we as humans put permanence on relationships. So I'll give you an example. Somebody will say, well, how could I give up on this relationship? I've put 10 years into it. I've put 20 years into it. I've put 30 years into it. I've put 2 years into it. Now that was a waste of time. I'm so angry because that was such a waste of time. And my question, my clients probably hate me. I'm like, was it? Is that true? What did you learn about yourself in those 24 months, in those 10 years, in those 20 years? What was the purpose of that person in your life? What was the purpose of the relationship? And what they talk about in the book is that we put permanence on relationships with siblings, spouses, parents, loved ones, partners, whatever it is, we put a permanence on it. Once it's in, it's supposed to be for life. And what they showed in the book was how many people who were at the end of life were like, I really realized that person was supposed to flow in. And then once that purpose of that person's relationship with me was done, it was okay for it to go. And because I wasn't seeing, people don't see it that way. They're holding on to it like as though it's supposed to be forever. And a lot of us are indoctrinated to believe it should be forever.
Yeah.
But the
And then,
universe will put into our path those people we are meant to learn from or are meant to learn from us.
that's so true. Every experience is a lesson. There's always a hidden gift, and it's up to us to find that hidden gift.
Mm. It's up to us to go into it knowing that that's what's there.
It's you have
That's,
to really be willing to look for it in the pain and like the sorrow and the misery.
yeah,
There are diamonds there. They're like gold nuggets, but you have to sift through some shit before you can get to that.
100%. And when we went, my husband and I went through this very challenging time. We had closed a business. It was really it really brought us to our knees on a lot of different levels. Thank God, not interpersonally, but just all the things around us that we had so much value on as making us feel safe, really kind of crumbled and like dissolved. And we were like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing we've ever been through.
Mm.
And oh, why was I telling you that? Don't you hate it when that happens? I don't know. You said something and it made me think of it.
Just about the hidden lessons and the gifts in all the
No, I
pain.
remember saying to him, I mean, basically, it was a financial crisis for us. We had owned this business for many, many, many years, and the market did a whole bunch of wonky things. And we basically were like collateral damage of the Lehman Brothers fallout. That's like the high level, right? And financially, it was very catastrophic to our family, which is very scary. We put a lot of value and a lot of safety in money, which was a very, very big lesson that I learned during that experience. But I remember saying to my husband, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like, this has been the scariest, most discomforting time. And we don't have a lot to show for it money wise, but I've never felt wealthier. Because the knowledge that I gained about myself was so extreme. It was probably one of the experiences I've had that was like the most unraveling, with like a depth of knowledge coming out of it, like that post-traumatic wisdom. It was so strong that I was like, wow, like I'm a different person forever because of this experience, and I wouldn't change that for anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We get those all of the time. It's just the willingness. I feel like it goes back
Yeah.
to the willingness to see it. Because, like, take the example of relationships, like romantic relationships. We've all had those, especially as women. And like that example you gave, like, oh, I gave it 10 years, I gave it 20 years, and it was shit, but I don't want to give it up because I put in the work.
Yeah.
But then, okay, you gave it 10 years and it didn't work and you're miserable. Are you willing to give it another 10 years?
Yeah. Some people are, a lot of people will stick with it because of fear. Most people will stick with it out of fear, right? Fear of being alone, fear of being judged, fear of other people's opinions, fear of what other people are going to think. I mean, that's ultimately why people fear for their safety, for sure. Like, there's a lot of different reasons why people stay in relationships. And I don't even want to say just romantic relationships, work relationships, relationships with spouses, relationships with siblings, relationships with parents, the relationship you have with yourself,
Mhm.
right? The breaking of cycles and the walking away from something that's no longer serving you, your inability to do that is 100% rooted in some level of fear.
Very true.
And if you can understand that you actually will be safe going through that, it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, I will never bullshit someone. It will be uncomfortable. You are not going to like this journey. But who you will be after I've helped you walk through the scary forest, when we get to the light, 100% different. And I know that you will come to me and say, I'm a better person for that experience. But most people will not want to endure it because it is so painful. That's why I love what you and I do. I see us as like guides. Like, okay, I say to my people, okay, we have this scary forest. It's like circle. It's like this dead circle of this dark, scary forest. You have a choice. You can circumvent it and walk around the outside, and you're going to get to the same place. And it's going to be a really easy walk. And you might trip and like scrape a knee or whatever, but in general, it's going to be pretty easy. And you're going to get to the other side and you're going to be in the clearing. But you really will not have changed much. This is the remain, right? Where you can go right through the middle of this forest. And it is going to be the scariest place you've ever gone. It's going to be dark, scary, creepy. You're going to feel unsafe. You are going to be scraped, battered, bruised. It's going to be so horrible while you're going through it. But I'm your guide. I've gone through this forest 100 times already ahead of you. And I'm going to be right in front of you. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to be able to get you through the parts that are the hardest. But when you come out, you will be a different person. So the question is, do you want to remain or do you want to change up? If you want to change up, let's do it. It is good, not going to be easy, but I will be with you the whole way.
Very well said. And I want to talk about the safety, that piece of
Mhm.
safety and security, which is so big for all of us, really. So we all want to be safe. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere.
Mhm.
How do you help a person get to that place of safety when
Well,
they felt it?
I
Real-
think the first step is you have to figure out where they don't feel safe. Why don't they, like, if cognitively they just know that that's an issue for them, but they don't really know why, that's where things like RTT are so powerful, right? Because the way I explain RTT to people is I will safely guide you to go back to some impressionable moments in your life that taught you that safety was not available to you, or that you were not safe, or you had the sensation of not feeling safe, right? So let's explore what area in your life you don't feel safe in and why. And then let them connect the dots. As you know, that's how we do it as these practitioners. Let them connect the dots on how that is affecting their presenting problem today. Once they can see that and they have that awareness, then we can start to do the work,
Mhm.
right? But to just sit around and like take a guess, it's just not really a good use of anybody's time.
It's not. And also, a lot of times we do things superficially and we don't know why we do it. Why
Yeah.
do I feel the way I feel? Why do I eating a bunch of nuts that don't agree with my stomach? All those things, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know why we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Investigation.
Investigation's huge. And that's why I'm so, so, so glad that I found that method, because nobody wants to be stuck and nobody wants to be talking it out for 10, 20 years either. They just want to get to the core root reason. Oh, that's it. Like, have that aha moment. And then now that I'm your guide, I can safely walk you through that forest, because you already know what some of your triggers are. You already know what some of the trips are. And then you get into the scary forest and you feel like you need another dose of reality. Like, we can go down again and dig deep, but it's available to them. And I think the way you come out of it is you're a transformed person at the end.
Yeah. Can you touch on a little bit more about the person maybe who wants to do it but still has the fear? Because, especially with what we do, people might be like, well, I don't want to touch that. Like, I don't know what's going to come out. I don't want to know.
Well, I guess I always say to the person, like, look, anytime I work with somebody, it always comes down to being ready, willing, and able, right? So, like, that's the reframe, the remain, and the release. Okay, you don't have to do it. I'm not here to bully you into doing it, but much won't change. So if you're okay with remaining stuck, it's fine. If you want to share with me what your fears are, I could probably share with you, like, are you talking about a fear of like even going down into the dark forest, or like going,
Yeah,
yeah,
going
like
down.
we would need to explore, like, what are you afraid is going to come up? Like, I had one client one time that wanted to do an RTT session, but had fear of what was going to be shared. Right? Like, I think I have this gut thing that maybe happened, but I don't really know. I think my conscious mind blocked it out. I don't know that I really want to unearth that. And I'm like, okay, so what if it comes out? It's your truth. Until you work with your truth, you're going to stay stuck. And I'm very compassionate about that. And I think people are afraid they're going to relive it. You and I, we know that that's not what's happening, right? You're revisiting it like on a computer screen or on a TV screen or on like a movie screen. But you don't have to be connected to it from an emotional standpoint. It's almost like you can watch it from rising above it, right? But you can honor it as a part of your journey, a part of your story, a part of what's keeping you stuck, and you don't want to have it anymore.
Yeah.
But in order to do the work, you have to be willing to talk to all parts of yourself. And you have to be willing to show up in all parts of yourself, even the ones that you don't like. And you might have to revisit something that you don't want to, but you can't let it go unless you bring it to the surface. Would you agree with that?
We totally agree. The only way out is through. I
100%.
believe that. And I also do think, you know, it's the inner child in us that's hurt.
Yeah.
And what do kids need? Constant reassurance, like you're okay, you're safe. And I think that's the beauty of what we do. We don't just like, guide them in terms of, the work that we do, but the space that we create, that container
Mhm.
of safety where you give that person that reassurance, you give that person the knowledge or even the container of like, I'm gonna hold space for you. I'm gonna allow you to feel seen. Not that you need my permission, but this is just a container for you to have all of those things that you maybe did not have. And just you can freely speak, you can freely allow yourself to be heard and to be seen and to be held. We can do that in this safe container.
And that's so true. And I had somebody say to me recently, you know, I'm afraid to share because I don't want you to judge me. And I was like, okay, so let's just be really clear. We're going to break it down to the most high level, neutral. What's going to be coming out of your mouth are a bunch of words and syllables. They have a different meaning to you than they do to me. You're layering all kinds of meaning onto it. All I'm allowing is for you, just like you said, to dump it into this container. And I just see it as words and emotions. I feel connected to your emotions. I have deep empathy and deep compassion. I can hold that space for you, but I have no reason to judge because it's not my experience, it's yours. So I think that makes it uncomfortable for some people too. They don't want to share their truth because they're afraid they're going to be judged by the person that they're laying it to. But the reality is they're judging themselves, right? I have no judgment on that person. I've heard some really interesting things in my time. And I can't ever remember walking away and being like, I can't believe that person did that, or I can't believe that person said that. No. Thank you for honoring me with your space. I appreciate it. And I'm grateful that you allow me to hold it for you, but it's not my place to judge it. It's just my place, like you said, to create the safe space to lay it down.
I love what you just said. And it's like, when I hear that compassion come out, it's just, that's what it's about. We are all work in progress. And if we can give a person that level of compassion and that level of,
Mm-hmm.
safety for them to do their
Mm-hmm.
own work, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I was working with my coach yesterday, and she's like, I hope that you never feel like you're working a day in your life because this does not feel like work. And I'm like, you're so right. It just doesn't. It feels like a calling,
Yeah.
right? It feels like a purpose. Like you're meant to be doing it, and I honor that, and I take it very seriously. Um, but it certainly doesn't feel like work. It feels like a gift to be able to give to people every day.
Yeah. And talking about gifts, like, do you have clients who come looking for like their gifts? Like, what are they meant to do? What is their purpose? Because, you know, it's all in us, whatever it is, the purpose and the gift that what we're here for. A lot of times it takes us time to get to that place. It takes us time to find what that is.
So I think everybody has the same purpose in life, and that's just to love themselves unconditionally.
Mhm.
And I don't do it well, trust me. Like, I'm not saying that I've got it all down. That's why I see like 3 different healers myself, because we're all works in progress, like you said. But, I think people get confused when they hear their life's purpose. When you can love yourself unconditionally, you can give unconditional love. And if that is what everybody was doing, we would have a very, very different world.
Yeah.
right? We wouldn't have as much conflict. We wouldn't have as much war. We wouldn't have nearly as much, division. There's a lot of division happening in our country right now, just in our country. It's a very divisive time, but it's filled with a lot of ego, a lot of hate, a lot of opinion, and not so much like compassion and understanding of other people's viewpoints or where they're coming from or their lived experiences. And everybody wants to know that they're right. And it's really divisive. And so I think that really comes down from people not really caring about themselves or loving themselves enough to just say, this is me and that's you and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's really bad. So I feel like, all my clients probably have the same, when they're working with me, I can tell you they all have the same goal in mind. And that's just that they want personal peace. 100%. They're coming to me because they're not comfortable. They're not happy. They're stuck. To me, the opposite of stuck is freedom or peace, right? Everybody wants that. I've never met somebody that doesn't want that.
I think also where it maybe is not aligning is what we say that we want and what we're actually doing.
100%.
Because to take my own personal example, for a long time I was saying that same rhetoric. I want peace of mind, I want quiet, all of that's the great stuff that we all want. But if it's not aligning with the actions that we're taking, what results are we going to get from that?
Not the ones you want.
No.
Not the ones you want. And it's 100%. And it's with everything in life. But, I had one client that was sharing something with me about a behavior that she had that she wasn't thrilled with, actions she was taking. And I was like, okay, so let's just look forward a year, 2 years, 5 years. Are you creating what it is that you want by doing this? And she's like, no. And I'm like, then why do you continue to do it? And you and I both know this because it's familiar, because it's comfortable, because it's what I know. Well, that can be changed too, right? We've been taught that you can make the familiar unfamiliar and vice versa. So if being in, let's just use toxic relationships, for example, if being in a toxic relationship is all you know, because that's all you've witnessed in your lifetime, that's what's familiar to you, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's chaotic, even if it's negative in the sense that it's not benefiting you, but it's comfortable because it's predictable, right? So how do you make that unfamiliar? How do you make that toxic, crazy, unfamiliar and make the peace and calm familiar? And I do a lot of that when I'm working with my clients, not so much like in the RTT space, but like when I'm working with them just one-on-one, like at that conscious level coaching, like I have my people write down stuff a lot. I give my people a lot of worksheets, like they get homework, because it's time to go to school. You gotta fix this. You gotta relearn what it is that you've learned up to that point in order to really change that behavior. You can't just sit back and want something and not be able to put in the effort.
Absolutely. And like that brings to mind a question actually, which is how do you balance giving out the carrot and the stick? Because I think both are important, like the sort of the encouragement, the soft encouragement, the kindness, the compassion and all of that, but also the accountability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I do give homework. So if you're coming back and you haven't done the homework and you don't know why you're stuck, it's a pretty big measurement, right? Are you willing to do the work? Maybe you just want to come to me and just lay it all down and have a voice and have me be the vessel to take it in. I can do that. That's super fine for me. And I'm happy to hold the space for you to do that. But if you want real transformative change in your life, you have to be willing to do the work. And I spend a lot of time, curating different pieces of things for people to dive into, depending on what it is that they're coming to me for. I spend a lot of time doing that because, again, it's relearning, rethinking, rewiring your brain to see things from a different light. I don't need them to go out and be finding that stuff. I'm happy to curate it and keep it into a library for them. This stuff's for narcissism, this stuff's for toxic relationships, that stuff for self-worth. Like, I spend a lot of time curating stuff because I know it can be very useful. But if I give it to you and you're not willing to do it, that's not on me.
Yeah.
Right? There's some ownership. People have to take ownership for what they're willing to bring to the table.
Yeah. There's a song, I think it's by India Ari, that says healing is in your hands. And I was like, you couldn't say it better than that. Like, healing is in every single one of us's hands.
Yeah, if I'm gifting you with pieces of gems that I know can help you through that journey, but you're not ready to open it, or you don't want to put in the effort or the time, that's okay. I don't put judgment to that either. If you're not ready, that's totally okay. When you are, it will make more sense. But I can't take ownership of that and say, oh, I didn't help somebody because they didn't progress. Well, they have to look within themselves too, is how much were they willing to put into the mix.
Yeah. And, reminding ourselves and even reminding everybody else that, like, everything worth having takes work, for one. And also, when we're working with mind and mindset and subconscious, it's not just one and done. It's over and over and over and over. Because all of the stuff that we've learned as kids, how did we learn it?
Repetition.
Exactly.
Repetition. So now you have to give your brain something new to repeat on. Overloop, think it, do it, work it. It's a process, but it works. It works.
Mm-hmm. And for you personally, what doing that same process for yourself, what have you noticed that's changed, or what are you ready, working on in the future to change?
Like, as far as, like, if I go through an RTT session, is that what you mean?
Yeah, RTT or anything that you're doing with repetition
I
too.
mean, I think it is 100% awareness. I mean, I am constantly doing this for myself, and my clients hear this from me all the time, is audit, audit, audit. Audit, audit, audit. Meaning, if I'm walking throughout the day and I have the sensation in my body, some sort of action or reaction or feeling that I don't like, the first thing I'm doing is like, okay, well, I know I'm not getting that without thinking something. So what am I thinking? I audit my thoughts like that. And that's what I coach my clients to do often, is the thought auditing. What is it that you're thinking that's generating that feeling? And by the way, it's one level even above that. What belief do you have that automatically yields that particular thought? Right? So are we dealing with the thoughts, or are we dealing with the belief? Is the belief not a beneficial belief anymore? Is that not serving you? Because that we can work on at a deeper level. Maybe you've done the work and you're just so familiar to picking these thoughts that are no longer productive. So constantly I give them a thought wheel and a feeling wheel so they can be actually thought shopping. And I say to them, okay, if you're feeling anxiety right now about the situation, what would you rather feel? And they'll lay down what it is that they'd rather feel, which usually comes to peace, calm, neutral, relaxed, right? That's what we want. And then I'll say, okay, are those thoughts yielding that? No. Well, what thought could yield that? This one. But I don't really believe that. Okay, so let's go back to the core beliefs. Like, it's a cycle, but you can't do that exercise if you're not constantly auditing and you're not constantly aware. So to me, it's that awareness and the ability to constantly self-audit 24/7. So that's what I've done. I mean, that's how I've learned it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's what I'm doing for myself, is I'm constantly aware of my thoughts, my words, my actions, how I'm feeling, because ultimately, like we said before, it's that feeling of peace of what's going on in your life that everybody really wants.
Yeah. And so when you get aware of what you're thinking that is causing that negative feeling in you, then
Hmm.
what's your response?
Is it true?
Is it true? Okay.
That's, if anybody's ever followed Byron Katie, who's like amazing, she reminds me actually a lot of Marissa. If you've never followed, have you ever followed Byron Katie before?
Mhm.
Yeah. So like that's the one major thing is like, okay, so if I do this exercise for the client, and very often I'll have a whiteboard right here, or if we're meeting face to face, we'll have a worksheet, and they'll say, this is the thought. And I'll say, okay, question it. Is it true? Is it a true fact? Because often, look, anxiety comes from things we're thinking about, things that are going to happen in the future, right? So you have to question it. Is it true? Is it really 100% factually true? 90% of the time, it's not. It's based on a belief.
Yeah.
And is that belief helping you? Is that belief serving you? Right? Don't you see how that all connects?
Yeah. It's all of those. It's just like a lie that we've told ourselves over and over, and it became true. It became a belief. If you tell yourself something long enough, believe it. Even
Well,
in
look.
the media, like we hear things
Oh,
all the
yeah.
time. It's like every day, then it becomes true just because
Well, it's the repetition.
you've repeated it over and over. So if
Yeah.
we can do that with things that don't serve us, imagine what we can do with things that actually serve us, you know?
Amazing.
Um,
Yes. And so it's just, that's what I love teaching, is that purposeful thinking, the intuitive thinking, the thought auditing, and really taking a look at your thoughts and understanding where they come from, right? Because your thought process is always based on a belief system. And to your point, what you were saying earlier is, we just adopt all these agreements, getting back to books and how people can serve themselves early on if they don't have the financial resources to say hire a coach or what have you. Don Miguel Ruiz, have you ever read The Four Agreements? Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the basis of everything. And I highly, highly recommend that to people because I think it's a really basic fundamental understanding of why we believe certain things that we do. And half the time it's because it's something we witnessed or something we learned by watching or heard,
mhm.
right? Without ever questioning it 100%. And I warn people when they get into the Four Agreements, the first chapter's kind of hard to absorb because it talks a lot about Toltec wisdom and shaman, and there's a lot of black magic, and like it can kind of turn some people off if that's not familiar to them. And I always say, don't worry about that first chapter. Just get to the chapter that says the first agreement.
Mm.
Just get to the chapter that says first agreement, start reading it through, then go back because that first chapter will make much more sense. And these are the kinds of books I love to give as homework to my clients because I'll
Yeah.
be like, read that first chapter on the first agreement and then come back or journal it out in our portal and tell me what you gained as insight from that, because doing those kinds of exercises in between sessions further solidify what it is that they're trying to accomplish,
Yeah.
right?
It, I do that too, but I decided to not call it homework because in my mind, homework is like, oh, fuck, I don't want to do any homework.
Because you're a teacher, that's why, because you're a teacher. So what do you call it?
So I was like, this is growth material. I'm going to give you
Growth
some growth material.
material. Okay, I can change that up. I like that.
Right? Let's give you some growth
Growth
material.
material. That's
Because
great.
I was like, the mind is just like, when you think of homework, it's work.
It
It's work.
is work. You're right. Okay, so I like that. I might have to come up with a new phrase.
But last
Um,
question for you before we go.
sure.
Going back to like people that you help or your clients, because I've gotten that question, which is like, so what would you tell that person who comes to you and says, I'm trying really with my thoughts to audit them, to notice them and to become aware of them. Uh, but they won't stop coming, like they keep coming and what do I do with them? And
I
like
mean, it
also
really
I
depends
yeah,
on the situation. Like in this Toltec wisdom, this book, I've read a number of books by both Don Miguel Ruiz and some of his children. There's this word matote, and it means 1,000 voices,
Mhm.
right? Like you just constantly have the 1,000 voices. I mean, if I really had somebody that was coming to me with that, where it just is constant and it won't stop, I would probably partner them up with, because this is not my expertise, but I have a handful of people in my life that are excellent at this. I would partner them up on someone that can really teach them how to get quiet through meditation. Because I think that it's a very powerful exercise. And it's interesting because I did have the chakra reading where it was actually a chakra healing just before I got on with you. And as I was going through that experience, I thought to myself, I need to gather this woman that I'm working with, and this woman over here, and this woman over here, and almost create like a list of services or village on my website of like, do you have this other issue too? Go over here. Do you have this? And like have it all vetted, like people that I know I'm very comfortable with. But sometimes it's going to be outside of what I can help someone do. Right. And I would say to that particular question, I think meditation would be very, very powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would just, meditation is like that stillness piece. There's no substitute for that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And it's a practice like everything else in life. We just
Mm-hmm.
practice it. We practice. And
Yeah.
so, with that said, please do tell us where people can find you, what you have coming up, what people can hear, expect from you.
Sure. So the best thing to keep abreast of everything that I do is on my website. And my website is flipyourmindset.com.
And I will make sure to link it up actually in the show notes as
Okay.
well when it comes
So,
out.
and really, I'm very active on social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram, more so on Facebook than I am on Instagram, but equally, I'm on both. And that's where people will always know what's new with me, where I'm going. My next step from here is I will be certified. You just love the way I like convictively say, like, I'll be certified by the end of this month because I
I
know
have
I
no
will
doubt.
be. I
I
have
have
no
no
doubt.
doubt.
I'm ready to go. And then I start a new certification in February. That'll be a year long or probably 10 months long, which I'm really excited about, which will be a certified trauma recovery coach.
Mhm.
And I'm in that program already. That will start in February. So what I think people will see coming from me is just a lot more education on what that is and what trauma is, so people can really start to self-identify and then decide how they want to heal it.
I love that, and I will make sure to link up all of that info because your social media is great. You do give out a
Well,
lot of
thank you.
value and a lot of nuggets that
That's my goal.
yeah, yeah,
Educate and inspire, and the rest will come.
absolutely, and you do it well. So thank you again so much, Queen, for coming. I had
I
a great
love
time talking
it.
to you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to this coming out. And actually, Bethany, she's
I
watching.
saw that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you
Bethany.
so
That was
much
so
for being
great.
here. I appreciate you, Queen. Thank you.
Thank you. Loved it.
Bye.
Bye.